Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase. I'm Chad Robert Morgan, and I'm glad to introduce Dicey Grenor from
Huh?
the Audi. Dicey Grenor, co-host of the Sex and Horror podcast. I know it's early. It's early for me. Not
Yeah.
for you, because you're Texas native, right? So you're in.
Yes, I'm in Houston, so it's about 2 hours ahead of you. Yeah.
I got a buddy of mine in Alice, so I'm used to having to deal with the time difference.
Okay.
Old Navy buddy of mine runs a game shop down there in Alice. So, having a good time.
I have no idea where Alice is. I've never heard of it, but I'm not surprised. Texas is huge. Everything's big here.
Yeah, I remember we did a book signing at his store for a Black Friday event, and we drove out there, and that just the trek was an adventure.
Oh, you drove from LA
Oh yeah.
or California?
Oh, I've done worse. I actually spent 9 months in Dallas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was doing a small little gig down in Dallas. It was supposed to be 3 months. It turned into 9, and then I went home. So, and I actually drove through Texas doing the Miami Book Fair uh, about a year ago, which lost my shirt on. It was very expensive, but great, great fair, great people. Just I I find it hard to do out of state because books are such a hard sell. And I think that's a good segue into our first topic. Because as an independent author yourself, you have at least visited, I know because I've watched the podcast. Um, I know you're a big fan of, I believe it's Texas AuthorCon and Texas Frightmare Weekend. Um, what is your opinion on getting out there, getting a booth, and selling your books like one on one to the public like that?
Oh, that's a great question. I even started doing like a series on that on TikTok, trying to explain because so many people are focused on selling online via social media and selling ads and stuff like that. And there is a whole missed opportunity to connect one on one with readers in person. And I feel like because a lot of us are kind of introverted or we stay to ourselves and writing can be a lonely activity, you're just doing it just you and your imagination, that we kind of don't interact with people a lot, or we kind of get out of practice, or it's not our first love. Like, you don't necessarily want to get out there and talk to people. It's daunting. You got to deal with rejection and stuff like that. But it is so rewarding because it's just like a comedian, a stand-up comedian. They get the instant gratification behind when you connect with someone, when you're actually talking about the thing that you love, your labor of love, what you've been spending and all this time on and toiling away for years. You get to talk to people and connect with them one on one, know exactly if they're your target audience, know exactly how they are receiving what you're putting out, and so it's not for everybody. I mean, your work is not for everybody. So putting it out there just mass and hoping it lands on someone is one thing, but when you go to an event, especially a more specialized event like Houston Horror Film Festival or Texas Frightmare. So if you're writing horror, then you go to a specialized event. The filtering is already kind of done, you know what I mean? So you have people come in, this is the kind of thing that they're looking for. So you already have more people who may be into what you're into, and then you break it down and find out if they're interested in reading what you have. And that's a communication. It's also really, really fun because whether I'm selling or not, and by selling, I mean I'm there to sell, but whether they buy a book from me or not, I am having fun in the environment. I'm where I want to be. What else would I be doing? I'd be sleeping in on a Saturday morning. You know what I mean? So instead, I'm there at an event, connecting with like minds, people who are into the same thing I'm into. And even if they don't buy a book from me, I just made a new friend. So there's somebody that I can remain connected with. I recognize them at another event, and you just kind of add to the people you know in your community. So certain communities are really fun. Yes, they may become a reader. Incidentally, it just so happens, this is a good example. I have met people one year at an event. We just, can I curse on here?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. We just shoot the shit. Okay. We're just talking about what they bought, the autograph they just got from a celebrity that they have been admiring for years. We're just talking about, a movie that we just saw, and they didn't buy a book, but we connected. We had fun. We had an interesting conversation. They will come back the next year and be like, oh, I remember you from last year, and buy books. That has happened to me several times. I've had somebody to come on the first day. They're just kind of walking around, seeing what's happening. I'm just talking to them. I might tell them about my books, but that is not the like, I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on connecting with them. So I talk to them, and then they'll come back on the last day and come by the whole series. You know what I mean? Or so being out, I know I'm rambling, but that's what you brought me on for, right? you it is an awesome experience. Texas Author Con I went to. When you travel, you do spend more money because you have to spend money on the actual travel, on the lodging, not just your booth. So you got accommodations too. So yeah, well, I know you said you lost your shirt. There are some times where it's not financially beneficial. But when I do stuff like that, I connect more with the authors that are there at an event. And so that is a community too. So you're looking out for each other. That's how I found out about another event, because while I'm at that event, they're talking to me about another one. And they're like, oh, you should check this out. This one was great. This one, not so much. You get to connect with them that way. Then you can collaborate on things. I have met authors at events that I end up being a part of an anthology with them on something later on. So you want to think more in terms of the holistic benefit, not just the sales. It's not just about the numbers. There are times when I go to an event and I am talking to people and I meet people, tell your dog I say hello. And at that particular time, the money is not there, but then I do have an uptick on my sales in ebook format. So I hope I'm answering it in thoroughly. I'm trying to answer it. I know it sounds like I'm rambling, but there are a lot of different bits to it. I think it is a wonderful thing. I have an event right after I log off from here with you, and it's local. I wasn't intending to do any more local events this year, but or any more book events in period. But this is another author friend. She's having an event, and people just started being like, "Hey, I want to be on it. I want to be on it. I'll be on it." So we're gonna do this today because it's Halloween and have fun. And so, did I answer your question?
Oh yeah. My dog is Denim. He's about a year old, and he is a vicious guardian, standing stalwart to defend us against the vicious mailman. And so yeah, I every time he starts barking, I've been trying to mute my mic so we're not getting a bunch of in the middle here. One of the bad things about doing a podcast with absolutely no budget is we have to deal with the dog. Um, I actually use that as a selling point whenever I pitch the Patreon. It's like, yes, join into the Patreon, and then we can get a dog-free studio that doesn't interrupt us in the middle of our podcast. Um, getting off the dog topic, back on topic. I agree with everything that you're saying about the cons. One of the nice things I like about doing out of state, and I've only done out of state like once. I'm trying to get into Texas Frightmare Weekend, and I'm trying to get into Texas AuthorCon, um, because I'm doing so many of the local events here that I'm starting to see some of the same people. And on the one hand, that's really good when they come back and say, "Oh, I got your book last year. I loved it." And they're like, that's a good, you know, um, morale boost to you. Um, but in terms of expanding your audience, when you're seeing this, it's one thing to build up a fan base, which is important. You need to do that, but you also have to expand that fan base. And
Yeah,
my goal with these conventions is break even. Right? I think of it as a marketing thing. Like you're putting money into it to make money later.
yeah,
Um, So my goal is always to break even so I can afford to do the next one.
Yeah.
So with that said, when you're doing one of these conventions, what are some of your sale tactics to try to get people into your to take a look at your stuff, right? What are some of is there any kind of approach that you take to get people to stop by your booth and take a look at what you're offering?
Yes. Okay. Can I pin that for a second and go back to
Sure.
something else you said? Okay, so going out of state, that is a real challenge also, I would
Yeah.
say. So it's one thing to do it locally, but traveling is one thing, and then out of state is a whole nother thing. And so having to like you, I want to expand and I want to move around and go other places, and so that requires a whole lot more logistics than just getting in the car and driving somewhere. You gotta ship books. You gotta ship books back, you know what I mean? And so that is one of those things that I've been trying to tap into, but figure out what is most efficient, like what is the best way to do these things. So I went to Chicago last month and I had an event, and I just focused on two of my books and not my whole catalog. You know what I mean? And so they bought books beforehand, and so I didn't ship anything. I didn't ship anything there with me. So there are a lot of different things you can do. You can have them buy books before you get there, like they buy them online, and so you don't have to take any books with you. But that was just my event. Like I was the featured author. If you're going to a con, then I've heard of people actually shipping books to their friends that are there, and then that way they don't have to bring any with them. So, but yeah, the logistics on going out of state is a whole nother animal that I'm trying to tap into because, like you, I want to expand. Now, the different things that I do in terms of getting people's attention, because that's really what you're doing. You want to get their attention first. And for me, I write kind of so off the wall and hardcore that if you can like what I'm putting down, then you probably will. So I have a few buzzwords. Like if I use the word spicy and you're like, nah, I don't read that kind of stuff, then we don't really have to talk about it any further. If you look at the covers and you get an idea that that's probably not for me because I see this girl is half naked on here, or I see this is a couple on here, that's not quite my thing, you know then that's not, we don't have to really go any further on that. And this year I started putting, because I have an expansion on like this is my erotic stuff and this is my erotic stuff with creatures. I started labeling it so you'll know it. Over here is where we focus on the erotic part. Over here is where we focus on the creature, but they get an erotic too. And so I started having, and these in the middle are my anthologies of just horror. So there's different ways that I draw people's attention. I also, with my setup and my design, I have it, the presentation is nice. Like when you go into a restaurant, if the presentation is like they got the pretty little leaves over here and the little dots with the syrup over here or whatever kind of stuff they have on there, it's presented to you to look appetizing as opposed to some fries thrown in the bag upside down. You know what I mean? So presentation, I make sure it looks beautiful, it looks eye-catching, and I have boobs. So I will put on I will put on the skimpiest stuff that my full figure will allow. There are times that I have had models that are also just as skimpy or skimpier because they can do more because they're models. And like my book cover model has gone out with me on many events over the years. And I don't like to stay behind the booth for one. I walk around a lot. I like to go out into the front of my table or the side of my table so that I can talk to people one on one. I can get a feel for your body language instead of just being back behind the booth. Being behind, I don't sit down. Everybody will tell you, I am on my feet. I am in high heels the whole time. I am on my feet. I am talking. I'm saying good morning. Like, even if you are not at my table buying, I am talking to everybody that's passing. I take pictures with people when they just want the pictures of with my banner. I am engaging and having fun. It is draining for me, but I'm loving it in the moment. But when I go out there, I consider this a performance. I am in character. You see, I wear costumes and stuff like this. And I have whips and floggers on my table. Also, as something to let you know, this is the kind of thing you're going to get over here with my books. If that turns you off, keep it moving. Sometimes it draws the wrong people. It draws kids. I had some last year that will come up. I don't know their kids now, but I always ask if they look a little younger. Are you at least 18? And then if you're not, then I'm sorry, but I'm not going to talk to you. You know, I'm not going to talk to you without a parent present. You know, like I'll say stuff like that. I had the last time I had this guy kept coming up and he was like, what is that used for? It was one of my bloggers. And I was like, how old are you? He said 13. I said, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to be the one to tell you. And then he came back the next day. Come on, tell me, what is that used for? I said, when you go bring a parent over here, I will tell you, but I will not be the one to tell you. So sometimes it draws the wrong people, but you have to, you know, figure out who it is that you need to be talking to. But for me, it is fun. I'm going to give it my all for the days that I'm there. And then I'm going to sleep the whole next week after that.
Makes me really want to see one of your conventions because I want to see that.
I do. It's fun, but I mean, it's like, and I ask myself. Sometimes I have these conversations with myself, like especially afterwards. Like I am exhausted after the fact. I am totally exhausted, and then I'm like, you know, was it really worth it? You know, I do a temperature check on myself. Did you really get anything out of it? Did you really enjoy that? And the answer is yes. I enjoy it every minute. I do need time to recover. I do have to drink my vitamin C every day to make sure that I am not getting the cruds and because I know my immune system is going down because then I'm engaging with a whole lot of people. I check in with myself and it's like, what else was I going to do? What else would I have been doing that day, that weekend? Like this is an opportunity to be out there selling my books. And if I talk to one person that buys, that's possibly one new person that would be a super fan of my work. They may come back and buy all the books. They may want to, you know, tell their friends about it. Not everybody does, but it's an opportunity to have one more person than I would have had if I were at home on the couch. So it is worth it. I don't eat during the cons either. So that means all day I'm on my feet. I don't eat. I'm not going to be eating and then, oh, I got to stand up and talk. I stand and wait. And then after the fact is usually when I eat. It's like now I can relax and chill and what's the word I'm looking for? Recuperate for the night, for the next day.
What I usually do when it comes to lunch is because I usually do these events with my son, my reluctant partner in crime. And
Okay. How old is he?
yeah, he's almost 17.
Okay, yes.
So he goes, he buys lunch, he feeds himself because any excuse to get away from the booth. Because he spends most of the time in the booth like this. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, thanks for the big help. Um, he's really big help in the loading in and the loading out. The day to
Okay.
day, not so much. Um, but he'll go get himself lunch, and he'll bring me back something. I was like, okay, run the floor. And so he's out, you know, in front of the booth, you know, doing that, and I'm like scarfing it down as quickly like a raccoon in a trash can. You know, to me, something about trying to get their initial attention to start that initial conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Okay, that sounds good.
Although it sounds like uh, your little thing for the start it sounds like a bit more adult and a bit more fun.
Yeah, I do feel like it, well, definitely adult, but I do feel like it's fun. Like I go out with the intent to have fun. That's my primary goal. I'm gonna have fun, and anytime I'm talking about my work, I'm having fun anyway. And so this is an opportunity to talk about it with other people so that either have read it or may want to read it. And so it's always fun to me, and I'm also being around people who also are as passionate about the sort of things that I'm passionate about. So I could actually wear something like this every day, to be honest, but it's only like around Halloween that it's acceptable to go out in the community looking like this, you know? But when you
Not
go
around
to,
LA. I think
yeah,
around here you get a little bit more freedom to do whatever you want.
fair enough, fair enough. When I go to an event like this, you know, it's an opportunity to exercise that same self-expression that I enjoy on a regular basis. You know, especially at the horror conventions, people are dressed in costumes, so that's admiring. So I don't know if you saw the new Terrifier, for instance, but Terrifier is my jam. Like, I love art. So when I go to like a horror convention and people are dressed up like art, that is already a barrier broken right there. That's something for us to come in and start talking about. You know, so you have people who geek out and nerd out over the same things that I do, all under one roof. And if it's at like an author convention where it's not themed, you know, I know you mentioned Texas Author Con, then it's still people that are passionate about literature. So we read some of the same authors, so we have that connection, you know. Some people go to a bar and they got to connect with people over their job, like what kind of work do you do, or like how many kids do you have, and you connect over stuff like that. Well, we're connecting over literature, movies, film, TV shows, you know what I mean. So you're
Hmm.
connecting over passions, over creative um, things that are in the creative space, which is fun. Like, what's not fun about that?
So you mentioned something about having a good opportunity to talk about your work. I think that's a good segue for um, to ask you about your work. Now you mentioned like you have your pure erotica versus your erotica horror versus your horror. Uh, can you tell me a little bit about your different franchises, your different books, what all you've been writing, so the audience gets can know a little bit more about the books you have out?
Of course, but you see how I forgot about that? Like, I'm just sitting up here, we're just shooting the shit, we're talking. I forgot. Oh yeah, I probably should say something about my actual book. I guess I just forget. I'm just having. We're just connecting. We're having a good time talking. So I have the ones that sell the most are my Narcoleptic Vampire series, and there are currently 7 books in the series. 4 of them are from Willow's perspective. I have a intersex vampire gets her own book, a werewolf gets his own book, and then a vampire assassin. These are the spicy with creatures. So we have, she has narcolepsy. She works in a fetish club. That's where a lot of the spicy comes in. She has a love interest with a personality disorder. It's kind of a mixed bag. I werewolves, witches, and I don't mean practicing religious witches. I mean like for the purpose of plot and horror, and dragons. There's all kinds of weird animals. Things that go bump in the night are in this book, and they fuck a lot, you know. So there is a story. There are a lot of different elements. Sometimes when people get into it, they don't realize that I'm also bringing in a lot of religious stuff, and that's because of some of my background that I throw in there. So there's, I do want to have more books in this series, but they won't be from Willow's perspective. I think we're done from Willow, but I do have some other characters that I'm planning to have their own worlds go into a little bit further. I also have several short stories that are in anthologies, like they're in other published anthologies. And so I started bringing them to my table because it's a way to get a taste of my work, but also promote small press and also give people a taste of other authors, you know, because like I said, collaboration. We can all win. There's enough people
Yeah.
and enough readers for us all to win. It doesn't have to be just about me. So with these anthologies, I have one that is a vampire story because the vampires are my thing, and they were doing this vampire anthology, and I was like, yes. And so I have a story in there, totally unrelated to my vampire series. That's called Vampire Noir, and that's by Mocha Memoirs Press. Also, Scary Sisters or Terrified Sisters or something like that. That's Black Magic Women is also by that same press. I have a story about Lilith. Lilith's Rise to Power is in the Deviance and Decadence anthology with Unsaintly. That is Unstitched Smiles publication. I have my own set of anthologies with my own story. So that is collectively all mine. I have 3 parts of that, 6 stories each, Demented Dimension. This is a erotic psycho horror anthology series. There is also my stuff that's just dark erotic romance. And I say dark because if you're going into it looking for it to be boy meets girl and they run off into the sunset and have a happy life ever after, you're probably not going to get that in my books. There's going to be a whole lot of BDSM, a whole lot of angst and trauma, but yes, a lot of erotic stuff. So I have the Kinky Friends series, which is a rock star series. We have their love interest is completely different from them. They are in a rock band, and they meet a love interest that's completely opposite. They bond over trauma and they heal through rock music. So I have Best Friends Fantasy Lovers, that's Irish guitars, and I have Fast Friends Desperate Lovers. That is that's the drummer Spirit from the first book. So there's head swapping there. A lot of times I mix up my writing style a lot. It's pretty bare bones most of the time in all the stories, but sometimes it's back and forth, head swapping from man to female. My books are all inclusive. So let me also say that I have non-binaries. I have every walk of life, I try to include, I have people with disabilities. I include people from different regions of the world. I want everybody to see themselves reflected in my fiction. Shameful was the first novel I wrote. It's taboo. It's about a married mother of 3 that has an affair with a much younger fellow. Going into it, she is going to do it. There are some legality issues. I stopped saying what his age is, but you go on the journey with her, whether you agree with what she does or not. I have a dark comedy book. It's How to Have a Perfect Marriage. It's about a married couple. They do everything they can to have a perfect marriage. They crash and burn because there is no perfect marriage. That's like, think War of the Roses. And I may be missing something. I have 3 stories currently coming out in other anthologies.
So you said you have an event like right after this. So what is your event schedule coming up? Where can people find you?
I believe this is the last one for this year. This is Terror on Tap. Jay Mazer is another horror author locally who owns a brewery. And so it's going to be at her brewery at 11 Brewery or something. I'm not sure about the name of it, but it is going to be today all evening until 9.
And that's out in Texas?
Yes, yep. That's here in, I think it's a Cypress address. So you know how Houston metropolitan area works. Like, we are within an hour of each other, but still Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's local.
Do you have anything scheduled for next year? Do you already have events planned out or anything, or?
Oh yes, there are a few that if I have an enjoyable experience, I go back to. And so as soon as they release the applications, I go ahead and I get them. I go ahead and get my booth and everything. So I'm already on schedule for Texas AuthorCon for next year. I love that it's been growing. Usually you want to get in when something is small and grow with it. And that's what I've done with Houston Horror Film Festival also. So I'm already a vendor for Houston Horror Film Festival next year. I feel like there's something else. There's some other things on there too, I think, but I can't remember. I know that I've done those. I think there might be 2 other events, but I'd have to look at my calendar. I can't remember what they are.
Yeah, kind of like when you're starting to get those Biden moments coming in on there. You know?
Right.
No, it's okay. No, I'm not kidding. Listen to me now.
Yeah, this is why I have so many. Look, I got notebooks everywhere, and I got notes all in my phone. I have to keep track of everything, Um,
Oh,
I just
and that's just the author stuff. That heaven forbid you have to also deal with your day job, your kids, and everything.
that's right. Yeah,
You know,
that's
how do you
right.
keep your head from exploding on a daily basis? Just,
Yeah.
I hear you. Do you have any new books coming out soon?
Well, what I have coming out are short stories. I
Okay.
have, like I said, I have three more short stories that have been submitted to anthologies and have been accepted. These short stories, um, it seems like that's really, really hot right now because people don't have to invest into a whole book. They can just get a taste for a short story. They're in and out, in and out. So anthologies really seem to be really taking off. I do have other books coming out. I don't want to say a date like for a release date because I have blown up my release dates within the last couple of years. It used to be if I set a release date, I was making it no matter what. But then life starts happening. I gotten older and I can't really stay on task like that. And so I don't want to say the dates, but I will say that one of the short stories that I have coming out is a very different type of story for me. And it started out as a book that I wanted to write, and I decided that I would make the first part of it a short story because it can seg right into the rest of the story. Like I want to expand. It's bigger than the part that I'm going to put out as a short story. So that's it. I think that really works. There's also a script that I wrote. That was the first time that I wrote the script first because no, that was the second time actually. Most of the time, my books were the IP. That was the original IP, and then I adapted it to script form. But there are two that I wrote that I started with the script, and so I'm going to go backwards and put that as a story also. So there's so there's like 200 things in here that are written, but just not for public consumption yet. They're just in here, and so I got to get it from here to here. And it's a process, but I've been doing a lot better with that. I've been doing a lot better with being able to switch my headspace. Okay, so my legal job takes up a lot of my headspace. And in the past, it was really difficult to transition from that back into the creative space. So my brain is just constantly doing this. But lately, I have been able to do it a little bit better, where I focus on this all day one day, and boom, the next day, I finished up a creative project. And I was like, oh my God, I'm finally getting it, finally getting it. So I do have a lot of stuff coming out.
That is what I think is impressive because I think I picked that up from the podcast. You are a lawyer, right?
Yes,
So
for 20, almost 20 years. Yeah.
so I get people at my day job wondering where I find time to work, and
Mm-hmm.
we're not a law firm, you know what I mean? So it's like I'm I know how difficult it is for me to find time to work with my job, which can sometimes be demanding, but is not normally demanding. Like it's normally a 9 to 5 job. We have what we
Mm-hmm.
call crunch, where we work insane hours for weeks on end. My day job is really good at avoiding that, but it's kind of a bane in the industry. I'm a game developer in my day job.
Okay.
Um, so and you probably heard about game developers crunching. So that
Yeah, my son would love that. Yeah. It was
everybody loves it until they see that it's actually work. Uh,
right. I think you're just playing games all day.
that's what they think, and it's like, no, we actually have to do work. It's like we've been spending weeks just going in the meetings, going like, so how are we going to attack this other person? I mean, you know, and just anyway, getting off topic.
Mhm.
Um, so I got like people at my day job like impressed that I can find time to finish a book, and
Mhm.
I'm not a lawyer, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like I can
Mhm.
imagine that your job would be even more demanding of your time. So how are you finding time not only to get a book, but you have quite a catalog at this point? For
Mhm.
example, how long does it take you to get a book from beginning to end on average?
Yeah. Well, the last full length novel I put out was in 2019. And I'll let you know that it's not moving fast. It's not going fast. Once I sit, but I've been doing more short stories too, though. I will say that. And I also is not, it's not gotten by me that that is also correlating with when I started the podcast in 2019. So my creative energy is kind of going to the podcast a lot, which is probably pulling from the energy that I would be putting into writing a full length novel. You know what I mean? I am a very creative person that needs a lot of outlets, I guess. And this is how I stay appearing sane, really. So this is manic behavior. That's what this is, Chad. This is
I like
manic
that.
behavior.
Appearing sane, not keeping sane, not staying sane, but the illusion of being sane.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody really sees the warfare that's going in here. I even had a few friends that be like, I would really love to have your mind. No, you would not. No, you would not. Trust me. This is a war zone in here. No, you do not. But I need this. You know, this is the balance for who I am. This is the dichotomy of me that makes me be able to stay grounded, really, because otherwise I would not survive, honestly. If it was just the legal, if it was without the creative aspect, if I did not have that balance, there would be no me. That is a fact, and I know this because I have tried it several times. So I have found a way that balances for me. Like I don't go into a 9 to 5. I run my own business. So I take the cases that I want to take. I do what I want to do when I want to do it. So whenever I am most busy with the legal stuff, there is less time and less mental focus for the creative stuff. But I absolutely have to come back to the creative stuff or I am mentally not right. There's depression and anxiety. I cannot stay over here. I cannot focus over here. So I've just found what works for me. I found that I do civil litigation, but I have found that certain type of cases are not for me because I'm going to be obsessive and it's going to wear down on me mentally and emotionally and that sort of thing. So I refer out family law cases, for instance. Those are not fun. Those are very tedious and they're burdensome on my soul. So I avoid them like the plague. I have done them for years. I have been a part of that, but that is not cases. I'm just giving you an example. That is not the type of work that I would want to do because it belabors on me too much. So I have found the sort of things that work for me where I can do it and leave it, do it and leave it. I can put it out there, give it my all, but then when it's time to release it, I can release it without it weighing on my back, without it affecting my blood pressure, without it hurting my gut. And then I can come back and be free and clear to do my creative stuff a little bit more and easier. It has been, like I said, I've been doing this almost 20 years though. So I know what works for me now, but it has been a struggle. It has been a process to get to this point and realize, okay, now I finally got it. I was just telling my daughter the other day, I feel like I just turned 50 years old, by the way. At
Oh, you're
50,
youngin'.
thank you. I feel like I have finally realized how to do life at 50. Like I know my daughter, she's turning 17 next week. And she wants to have everything figured out. She wants, she like this is the key to life and this is the key to happiness. And bam, I'm just gonna be happy. And I'm like, child, that is not how it works. That is not how it works. But I feel like now at this age, I'm finally realizing how to do life for me, what works for me, how to balance being the best version of myself. And obviously, it's still a growth process because we continue to grow as we live. But I have gone through so many different things that now I can feel like I'm doing life.
I don't want to jinx you. uh, but when I hit 50, I kind of felt that way too. Like I finally got a handle on things, and then life went, no, you don't. And
Okay.
So like it usually takes me about a year, just me personally, from start to finish to get the book done, and that includes the editing, the audiobook, and everything like that. Um, on average, some go a little short, some go a little long, but on average, about one a year. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and this year has been really hard to get into the writing process because there's been so much um, kind of family drama and with the conventions and starting the podcast. Um, because yeah, it's like you're trying to promote yourself, you're trying to promote other authors, um, but there's only a finite amount of time
Mm-hmm.
and there's only a finite amount of energy, and everything takes a bit of that. And so every night that I'm editing a podcast is a night I don't have to write. Every night
Mm-hmm.
that I have to clean up after the dog because the boy didn't do it,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's an hour I'm not doing something else. And so um, and it's been a real struggle. I mean, I don't want to air my dirty laundry in the public there, but this year in particular has been really a struggle because there's been a lot of family members having health issues and stuff like that that
Right.
has broken up the writing process, and it can be a struggle. It can be a real struggle, and
Yeah.
just and I don't know if you agree or not, but for me, it's just I feel like you just got to get paint on the canvas.
Mm-hmm.
You just like, okay, I wrote this chapter, it completely sucks. That's fine. Moving on. Because once you get the paint on the canvas, you can look at what works and what doesn't work, and then you can start refining areas, cutting areas out, and everything like that. But you got to get something down, because
Yeah.
if you have nothing, then you got nothing to edit. You have nothing to improve.
Agreed.
Um,
Yeah. Well, I didn't answer that part of your question. Now that I think about it, how long does it take me? So once I get started, it doesn't take me long at all. The mental part in sitting down, being still, focusing, and getting that canvas that you're talking about on paper, that takes a lot. That takes a lot of energy for me to tune out everything else, listen to my characters, get a feel for the pacing, because that determines whether it's going to be a short story or a book. The voice that I'm hearing and how I'm going to write it, how it comes out, me getting into that headspace for this particular story takes me a little while. And I don't and that varies depending on the book or the short story. That takes me a minute to get it just right. But once I get started, that's just gonna be done. When I'm that's the book, that's the short story, whatever it is. Once I get into it and I got my pacing and my flow, I'm good to go. In what you were saying about the hard times and all that, I feel you, and I understand what you're saying, especially at this age when our parents are getting elderly, and you know, I've been dealing with the fact that so many different family and friends have been dying around me and everything, but it gives me a vigor for life that I never had. It's like I want to live, and I don't mean like physically be alive. I mean, I want to enjoy life. I want to do the things that I want to do. And I have put myself back behind the kids, behind the husband, behind work, behind friend, behind everybody. And now, like, I would literally wake up and be like, what do I want to do today? And fuck everybody else. And
that's
this is a new stage for me. So even when hard times happen now, it's the way that I approach it. Like, my perspective is changed. My perspective is different on how I'm going to relate to those things. Today, I'm not going to do any work at all. I'm just going to go to the movies. This is how I think now. Whereas before, it would be like, oh my God, I got to get this done. Oh my God, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. And I'm imposing all these deadlines and all these things on myself and making sure that I'm showing up for everybody. Oh, this person's going to be mad if I don't call them back, or I got to respond back. Now I just be like, I don't want to talk. I'm not answering. I don't want to text back. I'm not texting. This person has called and texted me too much. I'm blocking. You know what I mean? It's just, I approach things differently because I am using the fact that so many so much has happened and I've gone through so much to be like, oh my God, I don't know when my last day is. And I will not go out and have left some things that I wanted to experience without having done that.
I might have to start taking a cue from you on that. That sounds like that's not a bad idea.
No, seriously. It's
I
life change. It's a game changer.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. I might have to do that because it's been I felt that burden of just trying to get through it and hopefully it's better on the other end kind of thing. But that kind of like, you know what, I'm gonna make time for me and fuck the rest of the world kind of thing. That's at least for an hour or two kind of thing is maybe not a bad idea. Just enough to maintain that illusion of sanity to not
That's
not to
right.
keep your sanity, but to keep that illusion of sanity. Getting back to that.
Keep the illusion. And you know what? If you fake it long enough, it's real.
Okay. Well, I know you got an event because I could talk to you pretty much all day, but I think one, the dog's not going to let me, and two, I know you got your event that you got to get to. But I really enjoyed the conversation, and I believe we are scheduled for me to appear on your podcast next month in a couple of weeks. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes. And we look forward to having you. And we'll try to talk about other things other than what we talked about today so that we can mix it up a little bit. But yeah, we're
Well,
going
I
to have
mean,
a good time.
today was about you. I mean, I try to minimize the amount of time I talk. Try being the operative word. Um, don't always succeed. But yeah, no, this was your show. This was your day to um, as you said, to ramble on, and that's why I had you here. So by all means, you have the floor. So that is the point of the Indie Author Showcase. I think you said something similar about the anthologies, about trying to work with other authors to lift up people together, and
Mm-hmm.
that was what birthed the Indie Author Showcase because we were doing an event at WonderCon and there were just rows and rows of indie authors, and we were all doing something different.
Yes.
And what I was trying to do was coordinate with the other authors. So if somebody came to my table and says, I don't like horror, I go, well, what do you like? I was like, well, I like erotica. Oh, there was actually a booth down at the far end that was like all like Futanari, erotica, and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, you want to talk to them?
Yeah.
I'm into fantasy. Oh, that's Todd next to me. I'm into militaristic sci-fi. Oh, that's Jeff and his brothers down there. And just try to match the audience to the author instead of all of us out there by ourselves. And then we're like, we really need to try to build ourselves up as a community because as an indie author, all we have are ourselves. We don't have a publisher, we don't have a marketing department, we just have ourselves. So this
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a zero sum game. We can work cooperatively and hopefully achieve a success together that we would struggle to do independently.
Right. Right.
That is the goal. Now,
Yes.
now, now I just got to get more than 3 or 4 subscribers, and then we can start getting the ball rolling.
Yeah,
Little problem.
it's a process. Yeah. But when you're out there promoting your books, make sure you have information out there about your podcast
I
too.
do.
Because
I do.
when we started doing that, our numbers started going up. Instead of it being one or the other, we started combining them. So when we're talking about one, we talk about the other two, and then you could start seeing a rise in both at the same time. So thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate that, and I look forward to talking to you on our podcast as well. I love when people are looking to build people up. That's always what empowerment. That's what I want to say, and trying to empower people to do what they want to do. Likewise, have the same goal. And so, thank you also for being active in our Facebook group. I
Oh yeah.
appreciate that. That's where you got my attention. I saw you posting in there, and I was like, "Hey, okay." So thank you for that. And
And here's
and I guess
hoping and here's hoping you're gonna make it out to the West Coast and visit some of these other conventions.
I hope so. Yes. I was out in LA a couple of months ago. I went for a Pride event. I did a live erotic reading in San Francisco. And then I was like, you know what? This is my first time in LA, in California. I've never been to LA. I'm just going to go down there too. So I took a train down to LA. I stayed in the Hollywood Hills area and just walked and had a good time. There's a story there though, because I ended up walking up to Griffith Observatory from
Oh
my
yeah,
hotel, and I had no idea the terrain I was getting myself into. But that's a
a
story
lot
for
of
a whole
this,
nother
a lot of that.
day. Oh my goodness, I almost died up there. I did it, but it was a dumb move.
It's beautiful up in Griffith, isn't it?
Yes, it's beautiful, but it was hot, and I was not prepared to do all that walking that I did uphill. But you know,
On a clear night, they'll have a lot of amateur astronomers put the telescopes on the lawn, and so you can just
hmm
walk around and you can actually see better with that than the big old telescope they actually have on the roof. They tell us
oh, okay,
so because
all
that
right,
thing is just like a million years old and everything like that. But yeah, if the night's clear, they have. I'm not sure how they organize it, but there are a bunch of amateur astronomers with their own telescopes, and they're all aiming at different things out in the night sky, and that can be a really fun night right there, Griffith.
yeah, I could see.
That's usually what we do after Universal Studios, because
Okay.
Universal Studios closes relatively early,
hmm
and then we hop over to Griffith to finish off the night because we're just literally down the road.
Yeah,
See,
that's
I'm telling
nice.
you, next time you're in LA, let me know. We'll play tour guide. We'll tell you all the good places to go.
I definitely will. I will. Thank you.
All right. Well, I look forward to talking to you in a couple of weeks, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Bye.